I've seen horrible things that you would never ever want to show anyone or see.
Like
And you
what?
jump when that happens,
Can we
like
dive in?
a bucket full of baby parts, like a bucket with a little baby arm hanging over. Yeah, and I'm looking at him like it was almost like a KFC bucket. It was so fucked up, guys. It was so messed up. That was like the most horrible thing I'd ever seen.
Why do you think you saw that?
I have no idea, but I don't know.
Do you think it was something that was physically real in another point in space or maybe another time?
Maybe some aliens are doing bad stuff to humans even. I don't know. I don't even like to say it. I think it's an evolutionary step, right? We have mutations. There are mutations that species have that help them survive. This feels like a mutation that I have to help me survive. Now, the question is, why do you need this to survive? And the scary answer is, I don't know, but something is coming and we need this. If you follow UAPs in the news and anything like that, they're trying to get us ready for something from a government perspective. And it feels like the universe is getting me ready from a personal perspective. There's other intelligent beings here that can see us. They can whisper in your ear, right? And guide you. Some of them are malevolent, some of them are benevolent. Most of them, I think, don't give a shit about us, right? They've got their own thing, whatever. It's like us caring about, worms or whatever. They don't.
All right, so welcome back, everyone. I'm Christian.
And I'm Patrick.
And prepare to be sucked into Black Hole Theories. Our guest today is Tom Matt. And from what I've seen, his life story really reads like a script from a sci-fi blockbuster. He coined the term Upsight Vision, which is another way of saying, he's tapped into another form of visual perception, except, how he acquired his ability and how he explains it is better left for him, to explain. So, ladies and gentlemen, Tom Matt. Tom, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's start. Let me give you a little backstory on how this ability came about. I guess you could say it's my origin story. About a dozen years ago, I had an advertising agency in Atlanta. I'm a married, beautiful wife. I've got two young kids, 10 and 12. And I had my ad agency for 20 years. Now, at that time, I'm a recovering coke addict. I've been 5 years clean. But I picked up this time, and for about a year, when I picked up this time, something happened in my brain. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So I would read something or some piece of information would come in, and I would believe it be true. Let's say I'm talking to my wife, but I hear something on TV. It would say something like, UFOs land in Arizona. I would hear this and I would think it to be true. That's just a specific example. There's so many more regular basic things. Like I would read an article about something that says man's wife has affair with policeman, right? I would be like, oh my God, my wife's having an affair. So everything that came into me, every bit of information, my normal brain filter had completely collapsed. And you can make a very good case that it was a schizoaffective, all these, mental health terms. But whatever it was, the filter that I had to go through my life as a normal human being had disrupted. It got so bad that I literally walked out on my wife and kids because I thought they'd been replaced by alien doppelgangers. I walked out on my thriving business because I thought it was a front for a government agency. I emptied my bank accounts. And I just spent 6 months flying around the country doing drugs and just thinking, woe is me. I can't believe that this happened to me. And also thinking rather psychotically that I was going to be remixing clothes in Hollywood for different celebrities. So I wrote about this all in a book called Jesus Goes to Hollywood, A Memoir of Madness, because it's so specific. The first 2/3 of the book are kind of like the stories and the specific incidents that led to and included my journey. The last third is about trying to figure out what happened. Because at the end of this 1-year journey, and it literally was a year. And my book starts out, by the way, I start out with me trying to burn down my house. My kids and my wife are gone, but I take a whole thing of gasoline, I pour it over the deck, and I light it on fire. Because I think the cops are going to come and the news agencies, and they're going to find out what's going on. Again, it's a front for an agency. Again, all this is psychotic. be clear. I know this now. At the time I believed it, given enough space, it's obviously that's what was happening. My wife was at home with the kids. It starts with a fire. The book ends with me on the couch having this bizarre ability to be able to see holographic images that are everywhere around us. Now, I know a couple of things are going to happen. There's going to be people thinking, gosh, she's clearly still psychotic. But let me just say, got 11 years sober, no drugs, nothing. There's no addiction or anything going on, because I knew I had to get clean and sober for anybody to take what was happening to my brain seriously. Plus, I wanted to get clean and sober and reconnect with the family. So starts with a fire. It ends with a mental, like, mind-blowing event of me being able to see holographic images that are everywhere. I'll tell you one more thing and then I'll pause for a minute. I call this ability Upsight Vision. And the Upsight Vision specifically is the ability to see these holographic images that are everywhere around me and us. And not only see them, interact with them, change them with a thought. So that's what Upsight Vision is. Now in the book, I call the place I access schizopedia, because it's like schizophrenia in Wikipedia, because you see things that are knowledgeable but not quite right. Since then, let's call it the noosphere, the book of life. Let's call it the Akashic record. I call it the organic metaverse. I'm seeing something that exists, a hidden biosphere, an invisible biosphere, and I can interact with it. All right, I'll pause to let you guys ask some questions.
Yeah.
Well, Patrick, I know you got some, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, so I can almost conceptualize what you're saying just because I've had a couple of psychedelic experiences where I had intense visuals of something that I know was being shown to me and not something that my brain was producing as a hallucination. Like one of the visuals was a really famous symbol that I didn't know at the time, but now after research, I know it's a sacred geometry symbol called the flower of life, which is like kind of the basis of creation. That's an aspect of the flower of life symbol. I'm curious, is Upsight Vision essentially you being able to tap into whatever dimension I felt like I was seeing when I was on a heavy psychedelic?
Okay, so let's talk about that, because it's a great question. So let's talk about what Upsight Vision is not. It is not a good mind's eye or memory recall. So if I'm driving down the road, if you're a passenger, Patrick or Christian, I'm driving and we talk about the movie Star Wars and we remember a poster as a kid, or the movie Halloween poster from the 70s, and we talk about it, I can drive the car and I can think about what that poster looks like, right? When I'm doing Upsight Vision, I cannot do anything that's motor like that. I could be a passenger and I can soften my eyes, on the windshield or somewhere else, but I have to literally lock into it. Now, that means two things. Well, it doesn't mean it. We'll talk about this too. I've gone to the IONS Institute, and the reason we're here is because there's a peer review study about my brain states while I'm doing Upsight Vision as opposed to memories recall. And there's some real fascinating measuring of brain waves there. But in any case, so there's 3 waves we know it's outside of me. And Patrick, I'll get to your answer in a minute about, the hallucination states, because I think there's a secret there, or there's something there that we can be studied and measured. But we know it's outside of my mind, and I'm focusing on it for 3 reasons. Number 1, my eyes get tired, just like your eyes get tired looking at, looking at a movie or looking at a football game or whatever. Number 2, my pupils dilate when something is arousing or exciting. You cannot willfully dilate your pupils. It has to come from an external source, right? And the third way is the same thing, an external source. There's something called smooth pursuit eye movements, where you follow, let's say, a gazelle across the Sahara. As you're following the gazelle, the only way, if you can't fake that either. If you're faking it, you have staccato jumps. But if you're actually following it, it's smooth. That's why it's called smooth pursuit. So that's how we know external. But here's the kicker. Once I'm engaged with it, right? Let's say I look at something. Once I'm engaged with it, now there is an internal response. So let's say I look over there, and for whatever reason, by the way, the things that come up, this is what's so ridiculous about this ability. It's like the worst super skill you can have. It's not really that bad, but it's kind of silly sometimes. Let's say I look over there and there's kids throwing a Frisbee. Now, once I'm engaged with it, I can say, let's make them throw a football, right? I can think both kids get on their bikes and drive away. So now there's something internally that's engaging with it. So it's both external, internal, kind of like hear an external thing, and my voice is responding internally. So there's a lot to work with there, and we're still starting, we're just beginning studies about what this is.
So based on what you've experienced, do you feel like you're remote viewing other places or locations or dimensions, or do you feel like you're literally looking into the same point in space, but maybe an alternate dimension of some sort?
All right. So the hidden biosphere that I'm engaging in is around me, right? There's a word I learned when I just started happening to me called Umwelt. It's the way a biological organism moves through the environment. You and I as humans move through this environment in a certain way. Worms they all live on Earth, but their environment is nothing as robust as ours, right? They don't have eyes. I'm sure they can feel something. I don't know if they can hear or if they can, or whatever other senses.
Yeah.
Birds have another one. Whatever, my Umwelt expanded. I'm seeing more of the environment that we all inhabit. So to that question, though, and I even wrote a blog, by the way, is called "Is Upsight Vision a Psychic Ability?" And it's on the IONS website. So it is not remote viewing. However, when I'm in this space, I can, in fact, remote view. When I'm in this space, I can, in fact, astral project. When I'm in this space, I can lucid dream, right? And there's even a form of telepathy. The reason I'm not an expert in any of those abilities, right? I cannot get in a lab and make those things happen. I can get in a lab and I can absolutely make a hologram. I can interact with a hologram. So the answer is yes, but I'm not, I'm sure other people there's other people I've done research that are better at it than I am. I think Upsight itself should be studied more in tandem with these other things.
Now, let me ask you, is there an on and off switch where you could just poof, or is it like meditation induced? Like what leads you, to activate
another great question.
vision?
No, that's another great question. Yeah. And you sit there and think about it too. In the beginning, I think that's why I kind of lost my mind and went psychotic.
Right.
All this stuff was coming in. I couldn't turn it off. Right. So to go to bed at night, in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is so annoying. But then I'm like, wait a minute, let's spin this. Let's make it a nice, relaxing stream. Let's make it a brook. Let's make it the side of an ocean. Now I watch the waves come in. Literally, that's how I will rock myself to sleep at night with an image that I manifest or pull in and use that. So I can't turn it off, but I can direct it.
Interesting. And are there points in time where it like becomes more visible or, more active?
So I think about this all the time. Let me give you a couple of scenarios. So the answer is late afternoon for some reason, 3 to 5. It seems to be a little bit peak, right? But it's 24 hours a day. It seems to be peaked at 3 to 5. When I wake up in the morning, it takes a little bit longer for things to connect in my brain.
Okay.
So you know what I mean? It's like I have to focus. I have to work a little harder then. But sometimes when I'm at the shore, right, it's stronger there, which is interesting, whether it's Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean. And this just happened in the last 6 months, right? I've been on a bunch of planes. Usually I don't fly first class, sit in the middle or business class or sit in the middle. And I'm in the front of the plane. And for whatever reason, I kind of think it was a battery. All the other brains in the back, because we were lined up, it was really stronger in the front of the brain. Now I can't prove that, but I can give you this anecdote, and maybe we can recreate that kind of experiment to see if other brains are in fact kind of tuning into it.
You just reminded me of something. You just reminded me of something that really did happen to me, but I was under the influence of acid. Okay. Now, when I was like 20, 21, 22 years old, I experimented with acid. This was my second time taking it. And I was hanging out with a bunch of friends, right? I think it was just like 2 other friends of mine. And we were all under the influence of it. And something happened, right? Something happened that I still can't explain. And a lot of the psychedelic stuff that does happen, like when you take psychedelics, you can't really put your finger on it, but I felt it. And I actually had 2 of my friends like standing next to me. We were looking up at the sky and we were all under the influence. Just a quick little disclaimer. And for some reason, we looked at each other and we were like, do you feel that? And it was like a eureka moment, really. Like we looked at each other and we're like, do you feel that? And then I'm like, yeah, what is that? And it was like this sensation, like this vibration that was like coming side to side. And it was like an energy field that we were like surrounded by. And yeah, to this day, I really can't explain it. And I don't know if, Patrick, you've ever experienced that, or if Tom, you just reminded me of that, which is pretty interesting. I don't know if we're surrounded. I don't know if that was upsight vision or upsight feeling. I don't know what it was, but it was very, very interesting and distinct. And I don't know if the psychedelics were part of the reason why that happened. But I do think that there is an untapped potential in each and every one of us, things that we can't explain yet. And what I like about, Upsight Vision and what you're pitching to the public, because I wanted to ask you this: is there anybody else on this planet that has experienced Upsight Vision with the same explanation that you are bringing forth?
Let me answer that in a second. I want to comment on what you said and what Patrick asked earlier about being everyone's on acid and you felt the same thing, right? Now, there's historical anecdotes of people literally seeing the same machine elves, or it's a group hallucination. That is, it's documented. Now, the problem in recreating it is everyone's high. Everyone thinks, just dismisses it. I could be in control. Look, get 10 guys on acid. I'm in the control. Think about this. If I am in fact tuning into something and they're at the same frequency because they're on acid, we could all see the same thing and we would know it is in the room with us, right? So you could be able to, it's like I could communicate with it. At least that is one of the things I've thought about. Because when people are tripped, the group hallucinations, they're seeing the same thing. You just can't prove it because nobody's interested. Right. It's like, these guys were all high and they just dismiss it. But I think there's something there to be researched. What was your question?
My question was like, has anyone else ever experienced Upsight Vision?
All right. So that is why I'm talking to you guys today. I think this is moving through our evolutionary. I think humans are picking up pieces and pieces of it. A woman has reached out to me. She's older. She's my age. We haven't met yet, but she described it exactly like I have. Now, and I've got these control questions, you know what I mean? If people ask, because a lot of people come forward and say, I think I might have it, all in good faith and stuff. Or they'll stop. They're like, well, I can't interact with it. I can't change it. So I think they might have some version of it. Right. And I think if you tell your mom, if you're 12 or 15 and you tell your mom this, she's like, don't tell anyone that, they're going to think you're crazy. You know what I mean? And maybe there's people with schizophrenia or have some kind of element of that. They drug it to turn it off. But even without that, even without the mental illness, I think people are in fact evolving to have this ability, because every time I talk about it, somebody comes forward and has it in one form or another. Think about it like singing. We can all sing, but we're all not Celine Dion's. We're all not Taylor Swift's, Frank Sinatra, Bruce Springsteen. Well, you know what I mean? You're all not, all because you can do it. Maybe you can't do it at this level, but we need to start looking at it and saying there's something there that needs to be looked at. It's another way, firmly believe that we can communicate with each other that has not been explored as fully as it should. And it's coming to be now. The veil is unlifting, however we want to discuss it. I don't know where your guys' opinions on this, but I think everyone, I'd love your guys to think something is changing, right? You can feel it. I'd love for your guys to hear.
Yeah.
Your guys.
There definitely is a shift for sure. And, even with technology presently, I mean, you're seeing Neuralink, and what you're explaining to me correlates a lot with like the technology that Neuralink proposes, Upsight Vision. And so I think that there definitely is something that's dormant that may be awakening. It's just, I don't know. I've never experienced something like sober.
I honestly have a lot of questions specifically about just the experience of doing Upsight Vision. Not to kind of shift back onto what we were talking about, but I'm curious, like when you call it a hologram, does it look like, because a hologram is like beams of light being projected into one place and you kind of see this 3D image. Is it kind of like that where it looks like you're seeing a projection of some sort, or does it look like it's physically there?
No. It's not physically there. I'm going to give you a couple of examples because if
Yeah.
people haven't seen one, they've probably seen the other. But most people have seen Tony Stark, the Iron Man, when he's in his office and he sees the universe in a holographic form around him with the one color tint. It is like that. It's that immersive. It's usually in front of me, but it can also be behind me. If you haven't seen that, there's a movie called Queen's Gambit. The protagonist is laying on her bed. She's looking at the chess pieces and moving around. It is like those things. They're not full color. Like it's not like the Star Wars one where Princess Leia, R2D2 is presenting C3PO or whoever it is, presenting the Princess Leia. It's not in full color. For me, it's not. It's usually like a color with a tint, or clear. That's a better way to say it, with a color tint to it. That's what it looks like. That's the perfect example. Those are both good examples of what it looks like.
Gotcha. So with this ability, I'm really curious about the phenomenon that you described, in the sense of you can almost control it. If you see a being, you say, hey, grab that bike over there, and then it grabs the bike. What do you make of the sense that you can control it rather than that being maybe a separate entity with its own free will?
Okay. So when I say you control it, I can, whatever the image is, I can look at it and shift it, right? So I don't think at that time, it's almost like surfing the net where you're playing with something there. Now, if a being comes in, a holographic being, because it does. In fact, when I was at Ions, this happened. And I'll tell you a remote viewing story in a minute. But when they come in, it can kind of mess with what I'm doing. It can interfere. When I first started doing this, the first year I was obsessed with math. Something opened in my brain and made me obsessed with math. I am a visual spatial, like this super ninja. There's no shape manifold that I can't bend or see in my field of vision and dissect into different sizes. It's extraordinary. When I was doing this in the beginning, these holograms, not a gray alien in the room with me. I want to be very clear on that. Not something that walked through the mall. I think I would be terrified if that happened. But in a holographic form, would sit there. They would show up while I'm doing this, right? And they would distract me. Now, it's not like I was communicating with them, right? They were just there to annoy me. I don't know if they're I don't know. I have another story about that. I don't know why they would do it. I don't know. There's people who study these things who are way more advanced, that know more about them than I do, because I made up my mind when I first did this. Actually, I was going to stay away from the UFO community. I was going to stay away from New Age. I was going to sit down. MIT, Stanford. I wanted to take a serious academic institute and get in their lab so they could do research on me. They ignored me. I sent 100 emails. They didn't care. Finally, Ions, which is consciousness studies, finally they listened, and the results, again, are extraordinary. So when you say, I don't know if it's an actual being, right? So no, I don't know. I do know. It's not a being. It's just this image, kind of like playing in sand, for lack of another word. You're playing with something that's there. There's an intelligence behind it. Make no mistake. And it's a give and take. It's a call and response type of thing.
Have you tried contacting the Monroe Institute? Have you heard of them? I'm sure you have.
I have. Yeah, I have. It was either Monroe or Ions. Ions got to me first, so I'm kind of Ions loyal.
Gotcha.
Yeah. They do the same type things.
So when you talk about there being an intelligence behind it, and this question is stemming from the fact that you can control the projection of these holograms that you're seeing. Do you feel that intelligence is within yourself, or do you feel like that is an intelligence outside of yourself?
So it is both. There's no doubt there's an intelligence in me, but there's also something out there showing me these things. All right. So let me take you back to first. Let's talk about it from a completely objective mathematics study. When I first did this, when I first had this ability, I would get mathematical equations. There would be mathematical objects, and I would have to, I didn't have to. If I wanted, I did the math. It was like a gamification. Once I did good on this one level, it would make it harder. Maybe not necessarily harder. It would take me to the next place. Then I got the next one, then the next one. Finally, about 4 years ago, I'd created in my mind, I've still got this. I have not turned it into software. I have not done anything, but it is literally built this multi-dimensional coordinate system that is so complex, right? The math is not so. The math is undergraduate mathematics, but the coordinate system is so complex. My next goal is to turn that into a software, right? That's what I want to do. That's up next. So that was teaching me that. There's no doubt. I didn't say there's no doubt. There may be a doubt. There may be a part of my DNA that, you know what I mean, that we tap into. Something was teaching me that. So in that case, it was studying. Now, there's other things that I try to do, and you think it has knowledge with, like, if you had this ability, I promise you, you'd be like, show me who wins a Kentucky Derby. You'd want to know this. You think there's a precog element. This thing does not care about helping on any stuff like that. In fact, it will show you the whole race and to pick a wrong horse. So that's, I was like, all right, this does not care about me making financial success, at least in the easy way like that. So it's trickster. It will not tell the truth. Or I don't know what you want to call it. It's just not true all the time. I can see pictures of myself playing as a boy. Now that's pretty wild, right? Myself as a boy playing outside my yard. I could see my kids playing as children outside in our backyard. Now, when I say it's playing with them, holographic, one color silhouettes, for lack of another word, but it's a three-dimensional silhouette. It's three-dimensional. So so there's a lot to still research here. Now, I'm going to say one other thing, and I'll pause a minute. I also see this hidden biosphere interacting with our real physical universe. I have a blog post on Medium called Upsight Vision or dark matter. The dark matter information age is coming, and it's going to make AI look like a middle school science project, right? I see these candy cane hooks interact with our DNA, right? If you looked at DNA under a microscope, electron microscope, there's none of the things I'm seeing interact with us. So where is this coming from? Is it a parallel universe? Is it a lie? I've learned that things that come back again and again seem to be true. Things that come back again and again seem to be true.
What do you mean by candy cane hooks interacting with our DNA? Like, what do you mean by that?
So when you see, everyone pictures a DNA, right? Uh-huh. You can picture that in your mind's eye. So let's do it now. I see a ring, like where everyone else sees I also see the helix, but I also see a ring around it, holding it together. And on that ring, there's candy cane hooks, and they move from side to side. That does not exist in our world. Now, if we sit there and think about dark matter, which is something we can't measure with the electromagnetic spectrum because it doesn't register on it, I think there's something else interacting with it. And that's what that's my hypothesis. We can't prove it yet because other than me seeing it and hopefully somebody else comes forward with this ability, we can't measure with technology.
So what function do you think those hooks serve? And I'm assuming that you don't mean literal candy canes, but things that look like that shape that are
exactly. Yeah, they're not literal candy canes. Yeah. There's an image, by the way, I can send you guys if you put it up. I don't know how you do things. I can send it. No, it's not. Well, they're candy cane shapes. They're definitely they're definitely not candy canes from Christmas. Yeah. No, they're definitely not that. So.
Because like I have a biology degree. I was in dental school before I decided I didn't want to be a dentist, and so I've studied a lot of this stuff. And like when I hear that, I go, oh, some sort of protein of some sort interacting with the double helix on a biochemical level. Is that kind of what you're referring to, or is it something absolutely. Metaphysical?
I think CRISPR is showing us how to edit it with that. This is pre-CRISPR. This is other CRISPR. If we could figure this out, we don't need to get to CRISPR. This is before those things happen. That's what I see happening. Now, I'm going to use that as control. If somebody comes to me and says, I have Upsight, something happens before the candy canes and after, right? When you see a cell division, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, that whole thing, and then frog or human, something happens before and after. And this is why I say it's consistent, and I believe these things to be true. When somebody else comes to me and says, this is what I see before the candy canes, and this is what I say after, then I'm going to be like, wow, we're seeing the same thing. Right? That means we're both seeing this same thing interact. More than likely, it means that anyway. So I believe that's going to happen within the next year. I believe somebody's going to come forward and say, well, this is what happens. And then when that happens, then the next thing happens, right? Then the next thing, like we're both in the same room. The person sits next to me and we're both, what if it's a telepathy, right? Instead of words, it's holographic images. It's a game changer, man. I mean, it is literally a game changer from communication, nonverbal communication.
Have you interacted or communicated with non-human intelligences?
So there's people that call themselves starseeds, right? That I interact with them. That is not my journey at all. They don't tell me things. These things that show up, they show me things. I don't know if that's by design. So Patrick, to your point, I think they're the intelligent ones. They lead it, and they just don't want me. They don't want to communicate with me that way. They want me to do this other work to get more people to build these things so we can do it together. I know that's a weird answer, but that's the best one I can give you. I see them, but interacting with them is not. I've it's happened a couple of times, but it's not common for me at all.
So you're kind of like the messenger.
I'm kind of like my mission. This is what I feel like. I'm supposed to bring people together, literally, which is kind of fascinating. You know, my ad agency, I'm a communicator, but this is people with subject matter experts that are outside my experience. Even the math part. I mean, look, you have to be good at math to run a business, from commissions and stuff like that, but not algebra. So it's really kind of fun, honestly, to try to build this team, I haven't even gotten there yet, to do the next steps to build this team, you know?
Yeah.
That's what's happening now.
Yeah. So it seems like some of the examples that you've been referring to just so far are like, you're seeing images that you can almost command yourself to get into that state where you're seeing these holographic projections. What's like the major, like, what have you found any function or purpose or benefit that you can get out of this outside of just seeing random images?
So that's the question my wife asked from day one. How can we do this to make a living, right? That's a fair question. It really is. Now, I don't want to be a medium. You know, sometimes images come to me like that. It's not my calling, or it's not what I want to do, but that is still a work in process, Patrick. I mean, it really is. Let me tell you what we did at IONS, if you want to hear that. So I tell you exactly what we did, the scientific study, the peer review paper, because I think this will give you, especially with your science background, Patrick, what they wanted to do. So I got up there, we did 200 tests. We hooked my brain up to an EEG machine because we wanted to see what alpha, theta, gamma waves were happening between mind's eye, memory recall, and Upsight, if there was a difference. Because if there was, now that's really kind of cool. If not, then, you know, something else is happening. Maybe EEGs aren't going to be able to measure it. So they would show me a picture of an apple, right? Then I would think about it using memory recall. Then I would use Upsight, and it would be there, right? So we did this 200 tests with everything. We did this 200 times. It was exhausting. At the end of those tests, there was undeniable differences between these tests, between memory recall and Upsight. And the biggest, now this was the surprise to me, the biggest difference in brainwaves was in the alpha state. Now, the alpha state is the state we're in when our minds are relaxing. You just chill, you're chill. Yeah. Well, when my mind is relaxing with Upsight, it's actually not relaxing. It's working really hard to to see these things, not look for it, see it. The other wave, it showed it off of all the wave states. I thought the biggest difference was going to be in theta waves because that's the dream state. I was convinced the theta waves were going to be off the charts with Upsight, but it wasn't. It was the alpha waves. So there was a difference across all the wave states, but that's the alpha one was the biggest one. Again, and this paper is right now it's under peer review and they're waiting for responses. Hopefully it'll be up in the next couple of months.
Mm. Have you seen any correlation with anything that you ingest that might enhance or even diminish some of these abilities? Like if you're super caffeinated, or if you do take maybe a microdose or a mega dose of mushrooms or Adderall or like any other
Definitely.
things.
All those things will help it. So I'm really athletic, right? So I stay sober by running, lifting weights. So the more grounded I am, the stronger it is. If I took Adderall, it would definitely heighten it. Caffeine, even anything like that. It would, but not like off the charts. You know what I mean? Not like a psilocybin or anything like that. But it could make it stronger for sure.
Let me ask you, Tom, what do you consume? Like, what's your nutrition like these days? Or, leading up to the first time that you ever really, started having Upsight Vision?
Well, the first time I had it, I was on Coke. I was literally on Coke. I was like, and these are the 4 things I saw: the back of a dinosaur, red blood cells moving through a body, a slot machine, and the Grim Reaper. And I was like, okay, this is in the book. I'm like, okay, I'm high, but I know I can do, for whatever reason, I knew I could do this without drugs. No one's going to take me serious if I'm, especially because again, I was psychotic, right? Let's be clear. There's a line of demarcation. Stop the drugs. Took a little while for my brain to settle down, a couple of years actually, but I still have these things without the drugs. So to answer your question, I mean, I'm kind of have a keto type of diet. That's
Nice.
that's where I feel the best, without a doubt.
Nice.
And again, I work out a lot. It grounds me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I was just asking because, maybe there could be a nutritional aspect that's related to these abilities, or the enhancement of them. And so, I'm constantly searching for ways to optimize my body and my health, and so, yeah, that's just very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Adderall side, yeah, it's not something that, I mean, it's just not good for me, because it's a derivative of Coke. I stay away from that. It's not helpful,
Yeah. There's one example, and I thought of this because you brought up the projection of a chessboard from that show, The Queen's Gambit, which is very interesting to me because someone who took the entrance exam to get into dental school and then got into dental school, one entire section of that exam was about 3D spatial awareness, and it was showing you 2D images of 3D random blocks, and you had to rearrange and move them in your head and spin them around. And this is a skill that's fundamental to being really good at like organic chemistry. I'm curious, have you tested your 3D spatial awareness, and do you feel that being able to project images and manipulate them, kind of like the chessboard in that show, do you feel that your abilities have increased, and have you actually tested that?
I haven't tested it, but I know they've increased. And I see other, this is really funny. I see other images in this realm that are like a square and a circle to us. They are just part of it, right? But I'm going to be honest with you. This is like intellectual property. I want to create, because this is part of this coordinate system that I want to create, this multi-dimensional. I just don't want to put it out there. In my blog, I draw some pictures of it, but I'm like, you know what? This is of value. It's important. So to answer your question, yes, I've gotten very good at it. I probably know better than I would say I'm very good at it, but no better than the best. It's not like genius level. Actually, I don't know. It speaks to it. It's adjacent or tangential to it, but it's just different. It's more than,
I heard you in a podcast, and I believe it was a Project Unity that I watched a good portion of the podcast, and I wanted to ask you, you had said something about video games and how you want to implement it into video games.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? So this coordinate system, let's talk about specifically, right? So all the video games are made from the same modules, not all of them, but all of them have the same idea. What I'm seeing is so different than the way we see our coordinate system. The way we see it, it is the XYZ. I'll give you this thought experiment. From this perspective, you think of the XYZ axis, you're thinking on a 2D plane, right? XYZ, it's simple. We've all seen it a million times. I see it. Think of it as nesting dolls. X, Y, Z. They're nesting dolls. They're not flat. Each one is on a different space. Now, I know that may make you, it doesn't help, but I only want you to think about it. And not only that, I'll give you one other one. So not only that, think about a horizon line is where where we're driving. So while we're in one of those spaces, we're driving towards a horizon line where this coordinate system ends. So when you think of it, it's here, everything is flat up all different ways on two-dimensional. When I see it, it's in front of me, but it's also behind me, right? So it's moving. It's always moving. Now I know I don't know if you can imagine that or not, but that's the kind of thing that I have to deal with when I jump into this space. I mean, it is extraordinary. And not only that, it shrinks, right? Now it shrinks. So, I mean, anything that you can think to do with our traditional dimensions, it does. Tesseract, I mean, yeah, it takes the Tesseract and it manipulates it in ways that are extraordinary.
Yeah, we were talking about Tesseracts in a previous episode. Remember, Patrick?
Yeah, the Tesseract is just basically the shape of what the four dimensions might look like.
It might. You just said it, Patrick. It's a might look like. It's what we humans think it looks like. From my perspective, it's not. It's not wrong, but there's more than. How's
Yeah.
that, right?
Well, you're taking four-dimensional space and trying to conceptualize it in three dimensions, which is why
Right.
it's all theoretical. But
Sure.
and this actually is a question I wanted to ask you, because I saw on your website you had mentioned something about almost like you're tapping into another dimension. Do you feel that your ability, Upsight Vision, is in fact tapping into alternate dimensions? And along those lines, if that's the case, what do you make of something like string theory, which predicts the existence of at least 10 other dimensions?
Okay, so I don't think it's another dimension. I think it's a hidden dimension. So it's different, right? The unveil is like there's something here for all of us to see if we could, in fact, see it. It's not, I mean, does that make sense? It's here. We just can't see it. Now, I may also be tapping into another dimension, but I don't know, right? It's like, it's sometimes I go to this space with the math and stuff that's so out there. I don't know. And I think that's why I say about building a team. I want people that are better at me than math, smarter at me than math. I want to be able to almost like, I can show you this. Now that I could build this thing, how do you brilliant people want to use it? That's how I see it. I can build it. You guys use it for whatever, for string theory. But yeah, the dimensions, and it's not, from my perspective, it's not 10 plus. My brain is not an AI brain. Things definitely get too hard,
Yeah.
right? So this is really important to say. Things get too hard, but it shows it's not an AI, because if all the things that I've seen AIs try to build it. No, this is very specific, and I've seen no AI come close to anything like it. So if I built this thing, if we program it into software, now the AI would have it. Part of me is like, you're like, huh, should we do this? But then part of me is like, yes, you're supposed to do this.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. I mean, I'm supposed to do this for whatever reason to help us, obviously.
Yeah.
Actually, that's what I do. I want to hope to help all mankind better, everybody, not just some group, everybody.
So how do you feel that? Because when I hear something like that, I go, okay, so like someone like Superman, fictional character, has a lot of superhuman abilities. The way that he can help humanity is fighting supervillains, right? So with your Upsight Vision, because we are still learning a lot about it, it seems like this is something that you've experienced, but you're still learning about it to this day. Where do you feel like your abilities can directly translate to helping humanity, like you just said?
Have us have a call to action that let's all do this together. Let's figure out what this is. That's really it. I mean, it's not that, well, once we have it, I think it's going to help all of us. But as I said, building these teams to look at it, I think it is something that, I think it's an evolutionary step, right? We have mutations. There are mutations that species have that help them survive. This feels like a mutation that I have to help me survive. Now, the question is that you're probably thinking, what are you, dude, why do you need this to survive? And the scary answer is, I don't know, but something is coming and we need this. Now, I know that's kind of scary, but if you follow UAPs in the news and anything like that, they're trying to get us ready for something from a government perspective. And it feels like the universe is getting me ready from a personal perspective, because I know nothing about anything about UAPs and then the government, what's going on behind these. I don't know anything about that. But it feels like my journey is to maybe make it less scary, let people know that we can be connected and communicate in ways we maybe have not thought of. We maybe have turned it off. That's really it right now, Patrick, to connect us.
So in some of the illustrations on your website, some of the images that are illustrating you having this Upsight Vision show what look to be the classic gray aliens and entities like that. Have you actually met entities like that while performing upscale?
Yeah. So this is the best. This is literally the best story. And I've told this so many times, but it's just a great story to tell. So, there's a thing called C5 and remote viewing. Obviously, when I had this, I didn't do any research on any of this. So this is going back 10 years, right? I'm just sitting there. And by the way, I would spend hours doing this, right? Because if you have this ability, you'd be like, it's like I would sit on the couch for hours and hours and hours and interact with these just images and things. So One day I'm sitting on the couch and I'm come to find out whether you want to call it remote viewing or astral projection. Maybe it's a little both. I stumble upon this ship, right? Now, I don't know it's a ship except for that I'm in it and all these gray aliens, there's about a dozen of them standing in a circle and they're looking down at this clear table, what looks like a clear table. And they're all looking, and again, this is holographic, by the way. This is not in me in the room with them, right? And I'm looking, I'm like, what are they doing? And I realize that they're remote viewing a town in the US or on Earth. And their eyes were kind of like their eyes were focused on the people. And when the people would leave the one alien's line of sight, the other alien's gray eyes would pick it up and move it. So they were remote viewing the town. It was so specific. It's like the eyes were maybe radars or maybe satellites. And I don't know if they are the ones that tuned it in or because they could pick it up, but I know they had to be together as a chorus. It's almost like learning from the wild, how somebody does something, right? But this is where it gets crazy. So I'm just sitting there watching and I'm like, oh, this is cool. Then two of the gray aliens turned to come to look at me and they started coming towards me and I jumped out. And that was the end of that because I was like scared. So I don't know what they were seeing, by the way, as me, right? I don't know what I look like in holographic form, but I know this. They knew I was there watching them. And I also know they weren't happy about it. That wild.
What did they look like, and like what did the inside of the craft look like? Do you remember the little details?
There was no, I don't remember any. There was nothing. There was no controls or nothing.
Nothing.
That's what I remember. Smooth. The table was smooth until I realized they were remote viewing. But again, I think they were holographed too. It wasn't like solid people. And there was nothing I remember on the craft at all. And what did they look like? They look like what you call traditional grays. This is one of those things. There's a reality. Olaf Rockner drew that illustration you see. And his grays are taller. But when I think of that now, I don't think of what I actually saw. I think about the image. So it's taken the place of my memory. Isn't that weird? Right? It's like I can't remember it much anymore because now I think of them like that. Whether they were that tall or not, I don't know.
Interesting. With Upsight, have you ever seen something? Because typically when you imagine something, you have a preconceived notion of what it typically looks like, right? Like, you know, an apple looks like an apple, a squirrel looks like a squirrel, an alligator looks like an alligator. And with Upsight, do you usually see things that have never really existed before? Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, have you ever seen something that...
No. That is literally that's no one's ever asked me that, Christian, and I've thought about that a lot. So kudos to you. Yeah, I've seen traditional things, right? You see apples, but I've also seen things that I don't even know. Is it a tree? Is that a living like an ant from like that? Is that a rock or is it a living rock? And then other things that I can't even describe here. So I've seen things I don't know what they were, right? I've even seen beings that this was a weird thing too, because there was a show on about 5 years ago. I can't remember the name of it. Damn it. Well, there were these reptilians that were driving trucks. They were literally like in our society. It's almost like it was a movie scene, right? They were in our society and they were watching me watch them. It was so weird. And there was a show about the cops in New York 4 years ago on Netflix. It was a bomb. It was a show about how we lived with these reptilians or something. I can't remember the name of it. Sorry about that. But in any way, it was like it was their planet and they actually had automobiles. But that was so weird. I've even thought, is that something I saw as a kid? You know what I mean? And it's a reflection because it was so like something, it was something out of a movie like that. And it was so bizarre. But I've seen things like that. And, I've seen horrible things that you would never, ever want to show anyone or see.
Like
and
what?
you jump when that happens.
Can we dive
like
into some of the horrible?
Yeah, I'll tell you, a bucket full of baby parts, like a bucket with a little baby arm hanging over. Yeah, and I'm looking at him like, it was almost like a KFC bucket. It was so fucked up, guys. It was so messed up. I mean, it freaked me out at first. Not at first. I've obviously still freaks me out now. That was like the most horrible thing I'd ever seen.
Why do you think you saw that?
I have no idea. But I don't know.
Do you think it was something that was physically real in another point in space or maybe another time? Or do you think it was, again, like maybe just a projection of just something you were imagining at the time?
And I don't think that's it at all. And this was a while back too. And since then, again, I've read about it. I don't know if these things are true that you read about ufology and stuff, but maybe some aliens are doing bad stuff to humans. Even I don't know. I don't even like to say it.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think it was. I know it wasn't imagination. I know I didn't. You know what I mean? I didn't come. That was like stumbled upon.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it too. I describe it like looking into a forest, right? So if you walk into a jungle, there's 1,000 living things there. Some of those things are going to ignore you. Some of those things are going to pay attention to you, and some of those things might want to eat you. Mm-hmm. You know, this is like that. I mean, it really is.
Yeah. This reminds me of. Have you heard of the pelagaras?
No.
Yeah, the pelagaras are essentially they're like a mythical creature, or a legend in I believe it's in Peru, and these people are found with their face peeled off. Pelagara means face peelers. Have you've heard of that?
You just recently, I didn't know that's how to pronounce it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that just kind of like brought me back to that, and how how messed up things happen around the world. And that's still an unexplained thing. I mean, cattle mutilations, that's another one that's still kind of like, unresolved. Who's doing these mutilations? Who's surgically, lasering cows for the sake of whatever, Yeah,
I do. It's I don't know the answer. But you guys know the hitchhiker effect, right?
Yeah.
Have you heard of the hitchhiker effect?
With Skinwalker Ranch?
Explain it to me.
Mm-hmm.
So the hitchhiker effect, let's use Skinwalker as an example. Somebody goes to Skinwalker to do research, right? And they saw something there that terrified them or scared them. They went home and this thing followed them. It hitchhiked back to their home and it haunted them there and did stuff there. Now, from my perspective, from what I see, that makes complete sense. Because when you make eye contact, if we want to call it that, because they do have eyes, by the way, these holographic things, with something, and they know you can see them, now you're a level of interest. It's almost like a kid stumbling upon a really cool, lifts up a rock and sees a scorpion, right? Now they want to mess with it. So from my perspective, that totally makes sense. And it's not something that seems ridiculous to me at all.
Yeah. Have you ever met any malevolent beings, maybe like shadow beings or something like that?
Yeah, but for whatever reason, definitely, but they don't stay. I don't know. I feel like there's something either that's protecting me. Maybe it's part of me, right? Maybe there's something coming off of me that they see that they don't want to stay around because some other being that they're afraid of. I know it's really weird, but that's the kind of thing I get it. Yeah, I've definitely seen shadow beings, but they do not stay at all.
Maybe your hologram stinks.
Exactly. No, that's really the joke, but it's true. Like, what is it? They're like, oh man, this is not good. This is absolutely something like that. Yeah. It's a sense that they have to get out.
Yeah. So are we assuming that when they see you, that you appear like a hologram to them, or do you actually see yourself as a hologram at those points in time too?
Some questions I have no answers. I thought about it. I have no idea. Well, since I've seen myself as a kid as a hologram, maybe that's it, right? That's my best answer. That's the best reference I have. But yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't even know where this information is coming from. I thought about this. We can triangulate this. Let's say we build this technology. We can triangulate it back to its source, right? If this is a source, it's another part of the planet underneath the Antarctic, whatever. Is it a spaceship? Is it in our DNA? I don't know where these things are coming from.
So you believe this is an ability that can be given to other people either through developed technologies or even unlocking some sort of abilities in people?
I think it's a genetic ability, right? And I think we can build technology for other people to see it. I do. I think eventually. Yeah, no, I think other people, like I said, people who are engineers, they need to know they have it. And they're like, okay, again, that's my mission, to connect people that can do this so we can build the things that will help us navigate this future, that reason we have to have this ability we're coming towards.
Right. I feel like with Neuralink now, there's invasive technologies, right? Like Neuralink, that you can now surgically implant something that will allow you to interact with technology, right? I feel like there should be some kind of technology maybe in the future that will allow, for the software, the technology, the hardware to see and interpret what you're seeing. I feel like that would be the ultimate way to find out, what this really is. Don't you think?
I do. And I don't want it to be invasive though. I think it may be a ring. I would rather have it not invasive, something you could take off, because that's a little scary, right?
The problem is that it's superimposed in your vision. It's like it's in your brain. So I guess that's really like the technological gap, right? In order, yeah.
I don't know. All I know is I can do it, and I don't have a. Oh, by the way, I got 2 MRIs. This is important. There's nothing inside my brain, right? There's no like something they pulled out. There's no stroke, lesion, brain tumor. There's nothing pathologically wrong with me. So I want to be very clear. And this is what's really cool. And the second one, I did Upsight inside the MRI. So in my mind, that's like, okay, it's not electromagnetic spectrum, because if it was, the magnets would have interfered with it and I wouldn't have been able to do it. So that's what's got me down the gravity, dark matter, dark energy path, because I could do it in there. But yes, I think we could build a technology for everyone to see what this is, right, if we're slowly evolving into it at different speeds.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the gateway process?
Yeah.
What do you make of that in relation to what you're able to do?
I think it's similar. Yeah, I think it's similar. That's such a see. This is what's interesting. They have such protocols to do it, right? So all this, and this, and they C5 to contact aliens and heist to talk to them. I did it so long before I learned about any of those things. I was doing it wrong. You know that thing about they have to retrain you to do it right? Because I did it wrong for years. So I believe those things can work and help people, but I just turn my attention and they're there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess kind of going back to what I was talking about with the malevolent beings, have you ever noticed that maybe what you see differs depending on the environment? Like, have you ever done this in like what would be considered a haunted place or a paranormal hotspot?
No. Great question too. I want to go to Skinwalker, right? I want to go there to see if I believe there's some things there that I would see that they would be able to measure, and it'd be terrifying. And maybe I'm so naive and dumb to go there because it would be the worst thing that ever happened to me, but I'm willing to.
Let's go. Patrick,
yeah, right?
Let's plan a trip. I'm down.
Yeah, right? Let's do it. But okay, so that's Skinwalker. That's alien non-human intelligence. I do not want to go to a haunted house. I have no desire to go see someplace that's haunted.
Why is that?
Because I think I would see it. I don't need that, right? I do not need to see this demon child, come at me like The Exorcist. I do not need that in my life. And I believe it's certainly possible. But I was at the beach, and there was the beach thing. There was some really cool, creepy, let's call them sea amoebas now, or no, worms. They were amoeba worms. They were near the beach, and they weren't necessarily malevolent, but they were kind of like indifferent. They were curious. I don't know. They were all over me. It was weird. They were all over me. It was weird. It was like uncomfortable.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I'd be curious to see you go to a place like that is because it seems like right now, and even going back to what you were saying earlier, you emailed 100 different institutions and only one got back to you, right? So I think the thing at this point is like, for people to truly grasp what you're talking about, they need to, I would almost think like, have something that you're seeing or interacting with translate to something that they're able to see and interact with too. And even if they can't reproduce the abilities that you have, maybe going to a haunted location where other people have seen something like full-bodied apparitions, if you go there and see the exact same apparition, I think not only is that proof that you're onto something, but also that, if you're seeing the same thing that they see, that maybe that location really is haunted. So it could be confirmation of the paranormal as well.
Yep.
So that I'm willing to do as long as it's a group of people and for that reason. And in fact, even if there's a medium that's saying there's something, how mediums sit there, I get the feeling I see a scarf and a woman in a yellow dress, right? If I'm seeing a woman with a yellow tinted dress, I love that idea, Patrick. I would definitely do that. And I think that's that's definitely a confirmation and something, I don't know. I haven't been invited to any of the places like that. Again, I just started talking about this more and more. And the reason I waited, I talked about it a couple of years ago, time and again, but the whole thing about the ions confirming it takes it to a whole nother level, right? Yeah. And there's guys like you who are young and curious and smart and know something's up. But there's these other people that are just kind of jaded because they're middle-aged or older, and they're like so told that it's all BS. It's not. There's something happening.
Yeah.
And it's weird too, because I had to get permission from the Avril Haines. She's the director of national security. When she was on the cathedral in Washington Cathedral, and said, "Listen, there might be extraterrestrials." This was like November 2021. That's the first time I'm like, you know what? Shifting gears from Harvard, MIT, Princeton, and whatever, and going to the if paranormal or ufology or whatever you want to call it. If the government is acknowledging it, then maybe I need to acknowledge it too. Don't get me wrong, I acknowledged it, but I minimized
Well,
it.
not
There's
only the
something
government. I mean, now we got scientists acknowledging it too. Look at Gary Nolan. Look at all these.
Soul
The
Foundation, without
Soul
a doubt.
Foundation. There's so many. It's become so much less stigmatized, and I feel like you're definitely. I would say you're in the right place for sure. And I do want to ask you this though, because even with remote viewing, I know that stuff is real, right? Remote viewing, and maybe even now C5, it is, it's becoming more and more accepted, to the general public, and sounding less, crazy. I mean, the CIA acknowledged remote viewing, right? We all have some kind of telepathic ability, right? And so my question to you is, even with the Monroe Institute and all the research that they're doing, it still hasn't become, 100% like, I guess peer reviewed and like scientifically 100% approved and accepted. So with Upsight, do you find with Upsight, do you find it a bigger challenge to get it out into the public sphere? Or I'm sorry, not even the public sphere, but the scientific community? Since, even remote viewing, it's still not 100%, like I said,
So
accepted.
here's the thing. So remember, the remote viewing is part of this, right?
Mhm.
So I can go into now, once this paper comes out, let's say this university in Tokyo says, I'm skeptical, or let's see if he can reproduce it here. Let's say if I go to some Paris Institute or whatever, and I'm manifesting this to get invited to these places, by the way. Some other university on the other side of the world wants to do this so we can reproduce it. The whole thing about science is repeatability.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can do this on demand in a lab all day, not all day long. Well, I can do it all day long, but I don't want to. Doing it with ions, it's very tiring to do it like that. But I can do it in a lab every day, The next thing I think we want to do with ions is get a bigger data set.
Mm.
We want to get a bunch of it. That's why I want you guys. I mean, if you do, put it on TikTok, put it on Instagram. Tell people to send me an email, right? And if they think they have it, if they do some research on me, look to see what it is. Because if you follow my Twitter feed, and if you go to Upsight Vision, it's a Facebook page. There should be some information there to let you know you have it. But here's what I think too. I think if somebody has it, they're going to know it because they've tried to talk to people about it and everyone's dismissed it, and they're carrying this thing around inside them that they just are ashamed to talk about.
Yeah. Do you feel like those in power, and if you know what I mean, like the Illuminati, do you think that they they possess this information and knowledge?
Did you say the Illuminati?
Illuminati,
Yeah.
bro. Do you think that they have, access to this knowledge? Do you think that they already know what Upsight is?
So I'm going to flip that on you guys because I want to know what you guys think. So all the research I've done, right? And I even, Diane Baselka is a religion and UFO studies. And I took a class of hers and I said, hey, have you heard about anything that you've studied? Her answer was no. I found nobody talking about anything even related to Upsight Vision. And that blows my mind. I just doesn't make any sense. Somebody must have something like this. So what do you guys think? Why can't I find anything like this? I don't know. It seems I can't. If I'm the first, I can't be the only one. How about that? Maybe I'm the first, but I can't be the only one.
You're the first person I hear it. I mean, it sounds like textbook telepathy, right? And remote viewing, like a kind of like a everything merged together with a visual aspect, the visual component of it. And so, I've never heard anyone else having this kind of superpower. Yeah.
I feel like based on what I've seen on your website and then our conversation so far, it feels to me like, just from the outside perspective, like you have an ability that we haven't quite mastered yet. It's like the beginning of a superhero movie where they realize they have these powers, but they haven't figured out the true function of it, right? Because what we've talked about are like what Christian and you've said is like multiple aspects. We're seeing holograms, maybe remote viewing other parts, maybe you also talked about like astral projection, and these are all like individual abilities. I guess to answer your question, I don't necessarily know what to make of it yet, but as a follow-up to that, like out of like astral projection or even remote viewing, like, do you feel like one of these abilities is stronger for yourself? Like, is there something that you're just better at than maybe another thing?
I'm going to answer it again. Upsight Vision, that ability itself. The other ones, I have not worked at them hard enough. When I say I've played at them, but I have not worked at them hard enough because I don't care. Because I mean, remote viewing, let's think about that. It is a military thing to find a target. It is a test, right? To me, remote viewing is passing a test, finding a target, hitting that target, and saying, wow, they got what I wanted you to get. I wanted you to see the Eiffel Tower with our two GIs underneath it. Did I just say GIs like it's 1945? Okay.
I understood it.
Where there's these two servicemen underneath the Eiffel Tower, right? That's how you pass that test. But remote viewing, it's not that. It's being able to do it, right? But for them, it's being able to do it for that reason. It's like singing. They want you to hit the D note. Singing is still a skill, but they want you to do a specific thing. So to answer your question, I like what you just said, Patrick. I feel like that's exactly what it is too, at the beginning of something. From those other abilities, maybe, but I think understanding what Upsight is the first big thing. And I had a dream the other night and I woke up to these words. Ready for this? I would love for your guys' opinion on this. You are not what you think you are, right? That's what it said. It didn't say you're not who you think you are. I was like, Christy, listen to this. It said you are not what you think you are. That was interesting.
Was that a thought that kind of like popped into your head, like it was placed there, or was it a voice that you heard say it?
It was a whisper. It was like a shoulder waking me up to say that,
bro. So interesting. I've had that happen to me twice in my life.
Really?
And I've had a handful of paranormal experiences, which is why I was curious if you've gone to a paranormal place. And these are not things that I sought out. These are things that happened to me when I was not asking for it. Right. And, one of them, so I moved to Arizona for dental school, dropped out of dental school to start my own online business, online marketing business. And for several years I was flat broke, working every day, trying to figure out how do I even create an offer that people want, things like that. Right. And I woke up one morning after contemplating this this is probably a year and a half of just like stressing myself out, working nonstop every day. I woke up one morning and I'm coming out of sleep, and in the seconds before I'm waking up and I'm kind of in that dreamlike state, I hear a whisper in my right next to my ear say, joy comes first, results come second. And so at that moment, I was like, if this is going to work, I have to start enjoying the process, right? That was the first example. Another example, I thought about this last night because I was really kind of trying to wrap my head around the idea of consciousness. And I wanted to talk to you about astral projection, not even knowing if that was a thing that you even talk about at all. But since you brought it up, I'll bring it up. There was a point maybe in this few months after I dropped out of dental school to start this business, I was sitting inside a lot, working on my laptop, and I decided, you know what, I want to try this astral projection thing. So sometimes when I'm bored, I'm taking a break, I'd lay there on my floor, try to get myself in a really deep and relaxed state, trying to induce a state of sleep paralysis that I thought could be like a stepping stone to astral projection, not even knowing if this is a real thing. And I could get myself to sleep paralysis, but I could never pop out like people say, right? And again, making me even skeptical that it was real in the first place. So anyways, one night I'm hanging out with this girl that I was hooking up with at the time, and I'm telling her the night before about me trying to do this and just trying to see like if she thinks it's really weird or nerdy or anything like that. And that morning we go to bed, and I remember I wake up and the sun is up because I can see the sunlight, and I am in full blown sleep paralysis to where I can open my eyes. I'm looking around. I can see the sun shining in the light. I've got the girl in front of me. We're in spoon position. I've got my dog right behind me laying flat against my back. So I'm sandwiched between these two on my side. And I'm like, okay, well, what better time to try this again? So I try to like sit up, and I'm unable to do it. Like, and every time I try, like, I feel like the world is just like vibrating really violently. Right. And I'm like, this is not working. And then in that moment, I hear a voice whisper to me. It was a female voice. It was motherly, to where I felt comforted by the sound of the voice. And the voice said, "You're doing it wrong. Just lay on your back and sit up." It said it just like that. So in that moment, I'm laying on my side, sandwiched between these two. I lay on my back. I'm like, okay. I lay on my back. And the moment I go to roll over and lay on my back, it's like everything in my vision is like, I feel like I'm floating. Like I feel like I float onto my back, and then I sit up. And in that moment, I go, whew, and I go into the air, and I softly land at the end of my bed, and I look at us laying on the bed, and I go, holy shit, it worked. And in that moment, I'm back, and and to this day, I don't know if that was real or if it was a dream. But I know that the voice I heard clear as day, it was motherly, and that happened right after I did what it told me to do.
That's wild. Yeah, that's incredible. And that, don't you think that's an external intelligence?
That was a few years before I had taken mushrooms for the first time, and mushrooms is when I saw like the machine elves and the circle of life, and they were holographic projections on the ceiling above me. And also during that trip, I would have waves hit me to where if I looked at a geometric shape, like there was a stained glass, my world would start melting into equilateral triangles, circles, and squares. And so that's where the only way that I can conceptualize even what you're talking about. And that's why I was curious if what you're experiencing is even remotely similar to that.
Yeah, no, there's elements of that, and I can get to that place. There's a guy, I think his name is Tennant or Taggart. He was mugged 12 years ago, and he started seeing these shapes everywhere. He couldn't not see them. I think something happened to his brain where he got locked into seeing it. He was on the news again. This is about 2014. But I think he got stuck in a place, and I didn't get stuck. His windshield cracked, my windshield shattered, and I saw something else. I'm seeing something else. But the cool thing is, it's not scary. The cool thing is, I'm like, okay, I can go to that place. It's funny. So the mental illness, let's talk about that. I was psychotic. I believed things, but descriptive psychiatry, people, that's how they describe you, right? If you're like, oh, these things are happening because you're having these thoughts and you believe them to be true, you act on them. If you don't act on those things, I can go there and say, okay, I'm seeing these things. I don't believe them to be true. See, a hallucination, you think it's true, and they think you have mental illness. No, I know these aren't true, but let's get to the core of what they are, right? I know, and it's funny too, because I think it was really important for my journey that I did have the psychotic break, because I think people, or they had in the past, come at me with mental illness. I'm like, let's take a step back. Let's talk about mental illness. Let's make sure we're on the same playing field to describe what it is, because if we are, then you're going to realize that was a place I was, and I'm clearly not there now. And you would see that interacting with me. The people that interacted with me when I was like that, actually, thank God those people are still with me, right? Most of them anyway. Some of them are like, okay, enough with Tom. But, they know I'm a different person. They know I'm a different person. They know something happened to my brain that I'm looking for answers. So whatever, for what that's worth.
Yeah. I was just reminded when you were saying that. In fact, I've had a third instance where I heard a whisper, and this one was trippy, and it will lead to a follow-up question I have for you. Because this one I can't explain. I think I've told this to Christian before, but when I was 7, I was part of a nativity scene. Do you know what the nativity scene is? At my church. And my church was just experimenting this time around. And I grew up in Kansas, so it was cold at the time. And basically they were like, okay, the kids have been practicing this play. I was playing Joseph. the congregation, the people, they built an actual steeple outside in the backyard of this church. So it's like a wooden shed, basically, without the face of the shed. And that night we go back to the church when after dark, and we reenact the birth of Jesus, right? And I'm Joseph. I'm sitting in front of everybody. So the entire church, they're all dressed up like shepherds and wise men, and they're all in front of me, right? And then I have like the kids right next to me, but I'm sitting in the back corner of this makeshift shed. And that's the positioning of that is important because it's night and I'm so young. They give everybody in the congregation these glow sticks, which, you know, you snap, it lights up, you shake it up or whatever. As a 7-year-old kid, this is my first ever time seeing a glow stick. I am mind blown by the fact that these things are real. And so anyways, we're sitting there in the cold dark. Everybody has these glow sticks. We're reenacting the scene, and I see one of the kids who's maybe 4 years old, and he's playing one of the wise men or the shepherds. He's sitting on the ground in front of me, and I see him. He's just gnawing away at his glow stick, like, and I go, "Ooh, that looks fun. Like, I wonder if it tastes good." And the moment I think that, I bring it up to my mouth, and I go, and the moment this glow stick touches my tooth, I hear a voice right behind my head. I'm in the back corner. Everybody's in front of me. And it whispers right behind my head, right here. And it goes, "There's poison in that."
Holy.
And I take it out of my mouth. After the church service, I go up to my pastor and I go, "Hey, Pastor McKinney, is there poison in this?" And he goes, "Yeah, don't put that in your mouth." And I was like, "What?" And then I told him about what happened. And he made fun of me. He started laughing. My dad walked up, and as my dad walks up, he goes, Hey, Rod, your son here says that he heard the voice of God outside." And they both laugh at me. But and here's the follow-up question to you. That is an experience where I heard a whisper that informed me about something that I did not know.
Yeah, that's great.
Which proves to me that it is some sort of intelligence that was communicating with me. Have you had an experience, again, making this real world where you learned something that translated to the real world like that?
So I can't answer it a hard thing like that, but I have absolutely about deciding whether I should do A or B. And I know I choose B because of Upsight. It's just like, yes, but it's not yes. It's just a knowing, right? And it's since then. So that's good. That's it. That is as good as it gets. Because like that's not helpful. You are not what you think you are was not helpful, Patrick. Waking up to that is not like I'm like, well, that's and with the what part is the thing. If you're not who you think you are, that's okay. But what you think you are, I'm like, what? I think I'm a human. Yeah, wait, hold on a minute. That's the what I got out of that.
Maybe he was talking about your consciousness, not like your physical body.
Again, there's so many ways we could go with it. There's so many, but it was definitely something that I think about it a lot because I think I'm supposed to try. Actually, think about this. To your point, it was be careful. To me, it's let's look for an answer. And that's part of what keeps moving me forward because there's not a lot of rewards on this. There's not yet on a financial perspective. I talk to people who are curious like you guys. Right? I talk to people like you're like, all right, this is very interesting. I want to learn more. But that's it. That's really it, and people that want to do more research, but that's it. And again, I want to connect other people. But let me tell you something about those Xylem chemical lights, because you talked about your mother whispering to you. My mother worked at American Cyanamide Company in the 70s where they invented those things. My mother was a secretary at American Cyanamide. We were the first neighborhood to have those Xylem chemical lights. That's what I used to call them. You broke them. And one of the first things they told us, don't eat these. This is poison. do not
really?
Eat it. It's cool. It glows in the dark, but do not eat it. I'm sure there's more people that make them now, but that was the first company in Wayne, New Jersey, the American Cyanamide Company.
Dang. That's wild. I mean, what do you think consciousness is? Do you think consciousness itself is a projection into a physical body?
And a follow-up to that is, I know with Upsight, you mentioned that, there's a DNA aspect involved. And, if we're containers, right, and we carry consciousness, because in reality, I mean, if we really, really want to go down that route, we're containers, right? And I'm talking to you through that container and I have a consciousness, right? if we were to believe that. Is there, really, do you really think that there's a DNA aspect to that ability, or, yeah.
So I don't know. I'm not going to pretend I know what
Yeah.
consciousness is. I know mine has evolved. Mine. If you would ask me this 10 years ago, I would have tried to stumble to an answer. But since this happened, well, it's actually more questions because there's so much more to see. If a philosopher saw what I saw, any famous philosopher, Daniel Dennett, a recent one, if he saw what I saw, he would completely reshape his questions. He wouldn't even think the same way. Even a mathematician, oh God, what's the guy's name? And it doesn't matter. Any mathematician, if they saw, they would think, oh wait, hold on a minute. Like we're not even using, this is going to sound silly, all the numbers. We think complex numbers at the end of it. That's ridiculous. There's so many more numbers that I have access to, right? Whether other people are going to want to use those numbers or not. When I say other people, the traditional mathematic community, it doesn't matter to me. I know they exist. I know they exist. I know that I can play with them and I can manipulate them and I can use them for what I do my mental mathematics for. But I don't have an answer for you, Kristen. I don't want to pretend I do. Yeah. Depending on the day, I might point to something, but sure. I think that to answer your question, absolutely. The DNA has something with the way we human beings move through in the environment. Do we have an important place? Or do we have an important role on the earth? Sure. But there's so much more here. There are other things living with us, whether they're biological or not. There are other living. Now, I don't know how you want to define living because it's biology, it's carbon-based life form. There's other intelligent beings here that can see us. They can whisper in your ear, right? And guide you. Some of them are malevolent, some of them are benevolent, and most of them, I think, don't give a shit about us, right? Except, they don't care. They've got their own thing, whatever. It's like us caring about, worms or whatever. They don't.
Right, right.
Christian, I mean, if hearing that question, if I had to guess, like we know for a fact that DMT gives people the ability to potentially tap into other dimensions. A lot of people who have DMT experiences report seeing the same beings and whatnot. I wonder if a DNA connection could be due to an upregulation of the DMT occurring in your pineal gland or something like that. Have those been any part of the tests or the MRIs that they did to try to attempt to measure DMT levels in your brain?
No. And it's funny, I wrote a blog post, is Upsight a genetic mutation? And I talk about upregulating. Something was upregulated. Where was it? In my vision, right? Is it my brain? Where is it? I don't know. I mean, again, these are just me doing a regular guy doing homework and researching this stuff. I'm like, well, it sounds like a mutation. It sounds like something was turned on that was not on before.
Right.
Again, I feel like I'm lucky that I'm older. If I was 25 and this happened, I would not have the same worldview and perspective. But since I was older and I went through most of my life not doing it, when I did do it, and also after coming out of this whole thing, it's like it just literally changed the trajectory of my life. It's like, all right, hold on. There's so much more here. So what I'm getting at is a lot of people that are 25, that's when schizophrenia first comes in, right? That's when you get the first symptoms, and the people are treated with chemicals, with drugs, so they stop seeing it. They don't know I've heard schizophrenia may not in fact be, it's detrimental, but why is it still with us? Right. There might be some kind of benefit we don't know about. And I know if you have schizophrenia or a loved one with it, you don't want to hear that. Right. I don't care. It's not helpful. But there's something going on that, that may be, I don't know.
Do you think that you were hacked, Tom? Like your brain was hacked by some outside force? Have you read Three Body Problem?
Yeah, I love Three Body Problem. So, but you know what the first scientist, you know what happened, right? The first scientist had numbers on the eyelids. When I read that book, I didn't read it till 3 years ago. I'm like, what the actual? And then when I find out what's happening to him, I'm like, oh, that's not a path I want to take. But anyway, and it's not a static, it's a countdown. So they can't interact with it, but something's being protected there. And by the way, I do think it's a quantum element. But let's be clear, I haven't said that. Even though it's dark matter, I think gravity, I also think it's a quantum element. So the answer is yes to the Three Body Problem, and it's going to be on Netflix. Yeah. And I know there's a version, but there's going to be a new one, which is going to be exciting. Do I think I was hacked? In my book, I was on the island of St. John's for a month. Yeah, we haven't talked about the book, and I'll tell you about why. We'll circle back to Jesus Goes to Hollywood, why I called it that, because I thought I was Jesus for a little bit. That's not a role you want to have. That's
because of the up vision, or I'm sorry.
What's that? Upsight?
Do you think you were Jesus because of the
No, no,
abilities that
no,
you
no.
had?
I'll
Okay.
circle back. Let me answer about the hacking. So I'm on the island of St. John's the first couple of months when I walk out on the family. Now, and I'm isolated from everybody. I'm doing coke, smoking pot, anything I can get my hands on every single day. And I'm building this map. These beings told me to build a map in my room. So I take strings, rope, clothes. I buy jewelry, and I'm buying like $10,000 freaking gold coins, and I'm hanging it from the ceiling from this fan that's in the middle of my bed. And I build this map. And then the staff is like, stay out of this guy's room. He's out of his mind. So something was telling me to do it there, right? I was hacked there, and in that time I also thought these aliens were hacking me. And in fact, when I was taking the ferry over to St. John's, they said you'll never leave the island alive. That's that's in the book. They said that from telepathy, and I just resided myself because there was nothing else I can do. Obviously, that didn't happen, and it was so weird. So was I hacked? I don't know. There's no physical because I got the MRIs after it. There's nothing inside of me, right? Could they have manipulated the DNA? Could they upregulated something? Certainly, but who knows? There was a lot of drugs. Unreliable narrator, that classic unreliable narrator. Um, but when I went to treatment too during this 1 year, I tried to go to treatment, and even without drugs, I still had psychotic problems because I noticed a lot of instances of synchronicity. Right? I had a fruit juice in my hand, and I poured it out on the rocks, and it splashed all over my clothes. The same time this happened, I opened up a book, and the passage, and I don't remember if it's Old or New Testament, it was something like this. And the blood was spilled upon the rock, and it splashed on the prophet's clothes. Something like that. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm Jesus. That's how messed up I was at the time. So, and I was clean and sober when that happened. So I still knew I had psychotic thoughts, and I had a lot of work to do. This is going back like 12 years now. But the instances, we haven't even talked about this synchronicity, right? When things are going right, you have synchronicity, like the world is guiding you to make some decisions. Patrick literally told you what to do, or gave you like joy before money. That's a thing. I noticed a ton of those. There was one instance. I'm walking out of a hotel in California, and this one I write about this in the book too because it blew my mind. The song "Blinded by the Light" by Springsteen is playing in my headphones on, and I have the kind that you have, the old kind. You don't need those anymore, but I wore those all the time because I didn't want to associate with anybody. I wanted to keep everybody out, and I played music all the time. "Blinded by the Light's" playing, and every verse of the song, it was as somebody directed a music video. Like a guy would do something from the verse of the song in a truck. There was a man putting something over his shoulder. At the same time, he said, a boulder on my shoulder. For like 38 or 45 seconds, everything meshed. And this is when I was paranoid. And I'm like, oh my God, these aliens are people that have control of the universe are mocking me, right? This can't be real.
That's great.
It was paranoia then. Now it's proanoia. When those things happen, I'm like, okay, right? No drugs. It's like, okay, the universe is guiding me. But that was like a big wake-up call. And I think people that notice instances of synchronicity, if you pay attention to it and ground yourself, they can help, right? And even if it's a bad thing, it's like a bad thing, something that's a negative, you're like, maybe it's telling you don't do those things. Maybe it's telling, or literally telling you there's poison in there, literally telling you, right?
Yeah.
So I think synchronicity is related to this whole idea of consciousness and moving through the world. And the only ways you can have synchronicity is if you have a body to experience it in.
Do you think deja vu is an example of a synchronicity that you're talking about?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot too. Yeah, probably. Yeah, right. I do, because I think all these moments have already happened. Einstein. If you know anything, if we've studied it all, like the somewhere this has all happened. There's some place on the universe where our lives have happened, and they're looking back on it. Yeah. So in that, maybe at a quantum level, yeah, I do think that.
Can you explain that idea a little bit more? I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Well, if you look at a timeline, right? If you look at a timeline, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, but somebody's up here looking down at the timeline, they can look at day 1 and all the days. We're living it this way. This being or whatever up here sees all the days at once. So they can, they know the day you're going to die. We don't, but some other intelligence does. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like, well, that's kind of what they say the fourth dimension is like, or what the theory is like, because I guess the fourth dimension would technically be time. So you could go through time the same way we can go through space. Is that kind of a similar
Yeah.
idea that you're referring to?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Again, here's, I'll just say this too, because again, this is intellectual property, but I've seen the universe. Or I don't know if this is true. I've seen something that looks like the universe be born, and I've seen it expand. I've seen where we are here, and I see where we're going. I mean, I know what it looked like in the beginning, and I know what it looks like to me now, right? Have you ever seen the loaf? There's a loaf. It's like Big Bang. Everything goes one way, right? There's the Big Bang, then this happened, then this.
Yeah.
That is not the way that's not it. The Big Bang, it's not. I mean, think about it. Nothing just goes one way. The Big Bang, it's the universe expanded like this. So maybe that's just a placeholder these astrophysicists use, but it's not good and it's not helpful. If you're going to have a Big Bang, something ages this way. Think about it like a tree. You got a root. Some of it's going, the stuff in the ground is 40 years old and it's going in the other direction. The stuff in the air is 40 years old and they're growing in separate directions, but it's growing from a seed in the middle. The universe for me, it looks exactly like that. And I will draw images.
So for you, are you saying that you've essentially, through your abilities, been able to see what the universe actually looks like, above and beyond what most people can see?
It's different than, sure. It's just different. It's consistent and different.
So in that case, the image that you're getting is something that is resemblance of the Big Bang. Would you take that as confirmation that the Big Bang is correct?
Yeah, it's more like and I just heard this on a podcast, so I'm going to steal her words. The UFO rabbit hole. She said it was like a breath, big breath. That's close. It's not exactly right, but it's close. I like the way she said it because it is. It's an expanding. Right? But there was something to expand. There was a seed. It's like, maybe say that, a seed, something like that. There was another element too, again,
do you guys hear my dog barking in the back?
I can. I think we both can.
I'm gonna go get that dog to shut the hell up.
Do you know what his dog's name, Christian?
No, I forgot. He has like 3 dogs, I think. Yeah.
Oh my God, I have the saddest story. We had to put my dog down 28th.
No.
2 days. Oh, 13 years old. It was so hard.
Oh, man.
So
what kind of dog?
Hard. A mutt, Sheltie, a collie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just brutal. And there was no way. I was like, oh, I'm going to carry her up and down the stairs. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, I took her to the vet. I was like, she's so miserable.
Yeah, it's tough seeing them suffer. His dog passed away 2 days ago.
Your dog did?
Yeah, I had to put her down. And she was not. It was so hard. It was as bad as
it was an endearing term. I love that bitch, but she's a bitch. She barks when people come. And my fiance was busy doing her laundry duties, so she couldn't shut that bitch up.
Yeah, good. That's good. I've seen an Illuminati. Let me tell you something. This is crazy about the Illuminati. So sometimes on a remote viewing, sometimes I just jump from city to city, right? And sometimes it'll be like Illuminati. It'll be like bad. Like everyone I'm seeing was all these rich people in high rises jumping from city to city, and it was saying Illuminati, and then it ended up the pyramids, and it was saying this looks cool, but it's not. That's what the message was, and I was like so thankful for that. And it was like showing me the secret thing. And it was just people. Don't get me wrong. It was just wealthy people who have everything in the world except their souls. It was wild.
Huh. I mean, I might have missed a conversation about the pyramids, but I actually wanted to ask you about the pyramids. Have you tried to remote view something like the construction of the pyramids? Okay, wait. Oh, God, we got to talk about this. So this is another reason I think it's survival. I cannot remote view something that's a danger to me. I've resolved that. I've tried to remote view the Epstein murder, but this thing knows that's dangerous. I do not really. I think I want to do it, but I do not. Right? So it will do something. It'll turn it into smoke or just go away. I tried to remote view Area 51. Right? So when I get to Area 51,
it'll show something like out of an old movie or a metaphor, however you want to call it, like a Doberman's and these guys in uniforms at this gate, not a gate, at a door, a steel door, to keep me away. And it will not let me go see it. So I think that's another reason I think it's an evolutionary survival thing. It will not put me in danger to let me know something that this knowledge could get me hurt. And I'm like, after a while, I realized that I'm like, holy shit. And then I'm like, well, of course I don't want to gamble with this. If you do this, you're going to be threatened. People will want you to win races all the time, you know?
Yeah.
But that's a very specific thing. That said, I have seen the Kennedy murder, the Kennedy assassination. Do you want to know you want to know what it looks like from my perspective? Okay.
You don't actually keep it a secret. I don't want to know.
No, I'm
joking.
There's a Twitter thread. I have a Twitter thread on this.
Okay.
So the first shot is underneath. There's a guy laying on his back underneath the car. He's in between the driver and Connolly, and he's got a gun right through the vents. It's a can't miss shot. So that's why he can't miss.
He's under the car.
In the car. He's moving with the car like an oven tray. Pull it out. Boom. Under the tray. He's literally there the whole time, and he shoots him in the throat. Right when he holds holds it like that, it's a can't miss shot. You can't do that from the book deposit, right? That's nonsense. And if you notice, after I saw this, I watched the video again, and you could see Connolly jump like something came up between them. You can see him actually jump. That's
so he didn't shoot through the bottom of the car. He came up from the floor.
There was something through a vent or something. Yes, absolutely.
So there was no hole.
No hole. No. This was all planned out. And it couldn't, and it was a can't miss shot. So the gun, I saw the gun as it's not like he was holding it. It was like an oar. You know, when you have the row, it was. What's the word I'm looking for? It was in place, so you can't miss it. So yeah, right. So that, and I was like, holy shit. Now remember, sometimes the remote view things that are bullshit. So I don't know why it would keep showing me this nonsense, but whatever. That's what I see.
Yeah. But you haven't done something like the pyramids or anything like that?
How they're built?
Yeah.
No,
or who
actually,
built them or when they were built?
No, you know what? But I will get back to you. I'm not kidding, Patrick. I haven't, and let me see what it shows me. I'd be very curious.
I'm going to send you. I'll have Christian send you my last video that was about the pyramids, so you can kind of understand where my mysteries lie around that.
No, that's cool, and it may show me something literally logical and still be a lie. That's what's so wild about this. That's why we need to get other people to do it so we can, check our resources and our references.
So that's why I'm really curious for you to hone an ability that's testable, because remote viewing, we know for a fact, if it's real, like theoretically you could test it. Hey, show me what's inside this room. I'll tell you if you're right or not. Mm-hmm. And that's why, like, I'm also curious around the phenomenon where sometimes what you're seeing is wrong, or sometimes you're actually controlling what they're doing. Because to me, that's like brings me back to the same dilemma of, like, sometimes you have those moments where, like, a lucid dream, but it's still a dream, in that sense. And you wonder, like, is astral projection really just a really intense lucid dream? And it's hard to know unless we can actually prove these things in the physical reality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, again, bigger data set. And remote viewing to me would be harder to do than going to the haunted house you were talking about. Remote viewing is, again, for me, somebody else maybe. But what about if somebody who's a remote viewing expert and I get together and I'm telling them what I see while they're drawing it? It's the whole idea. It's the same idea you say about the haunted location. They've said this person's there, and I'm like, okay, this is what I see. But like I said, I'm afraid, I don't want that bitch coming back with me. I don't want some scary little demon kid. I say the hitchhiker effect. I say it around aliens and non-human intelligence that are maybe not organic, biological, but something that was a freaking ghost, a human at one point.
Yeah,
I was a horror movie fan as a kid, and The Exorcist. Forget it. Most scariest movie. Sort of like 12 years old. Not a smart move.
Yeah. Let me ask you, Tom, I know that you mentioned, when we first started our podcast, that you believe that there's a disclosure plan in place, and I'm sure you've looked into the Soul Foundation and everything. What are your thoughts on, like, what's going on? Do you think that there really is, like, a timeline for disclosure?
So I'll tell you one of the coolest things by paying attention to it for the last couple of years, you realize both sides are playing games, right? There's no honesty on both sides. They both have an agenda, both sides. But the fact that there is agenda to be had means something there's there to look at,
Yeah.
right? There is something there. I mean, listen, you really have to walk yourself in circles to think there's not something going on, or just be, like Mick West, be so scared of it because, he saw an alien in his room when he was a kid. He just denies it on every level. Or maybe he's getting paid to deny it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anybody that's, intellectually honest, you can't think there's not anything going on. You can't. So do I think a disclosure movement's coming? Yes, I think they're trying to prepare us for something. I do. And I also feel this. I feel this on my end with whatever's going on with me. Something is coming. Like all these things are getting put into place. And I don't want to necessarily say it's scary. Maybe it's something to be unveiled, but something is coming that's going to shock the world, like big time.
So you think it's no coincidence that, your ability for Upsight and, these this ability that you just conjured up out of nowhere, you feel like that correlates with what's going on with disclosure to some capacity? Do you think that we're undergoing some kind of awakening?
I do. And I wouldn't have said that I wouldn't even have said that 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But since I've started paying attention to it, and since I've seen the games they're playing, and since my ability, I could say it's like a muscle. It's gotten stronger. More things have come, to me, and more good things have happening. But for example, just the simple fact that IONS said, let's get you to California and do the testing. That's a big deal. Yeah. That there's a peer review paper that will be studied by other scientists so they can ask questions and say, all right, let's do this again, or let's find somebody else. These are all big deals. That's why whenever you put this up, please put the words, I don't care if you use my name as much as you put Upsight Vision in the title. I just want people to know that this thing is there. Upsight Vision exists. Even if it's a tenth of 100, I don't know, a tenth of 1% of the population, it's still a lot of people that could do it.
Yeah. I'm curious, going back to the remote viewing aspect, there was one, when you mentioned like you try to look at Area 51 and you see like guards with Dobermans, you've also tried to remote view the Epstein murder, but it's really hazy and you can't see that. So I'm curious, and this is coming because I've heard people like who claim they astral project. Sometimes they'll talk about like, oh, if you try to go to the moon on an astral projection, like you can't get in, like it's guarded, or like there are certain locations that are physically guarded by whatever other entities can access that. Have you thought like maybe the Area 51, maybe what you have has already been mastered by people like that, and they have defenses for people like you who are coming in and trying to look at that?
Absolutely. I've thought about that. Sure. It makes sense. Without a doubt. Yeah, I think that could be the case, a lot of them. So I haven't spent a lot of time on the moon, looking at the moon, but I have just dancing, and it sounds so corny, jumping around the stars, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And that's where the math lives too, which is, this is how I see it. Lucid dreaming is your own personal, like internal stuff, your biggest dreams, the most things you're embarrassed about, the most things you hold dear. Remote viewing is the middle ground, right, where people can meet. Then there's astral projection farther past that. And with that is abstract knowledge. Now, I don't know if that's for everybody. That's it for me. So if we can have remote viewing is a common place where people can meet and communicate through telepathy and holograms, right? That's, from my experience, that's what's happening. So even if somebody has telepathy, it's not that they can read your mind. They can read your mind just like a communication. You can read if you're communicating with people. Somebody can maybe listen, but they can't really. Again, I don't know if this is true from what's happening with me and these beings that are like stumble in and just notice. They're paying attention to them now, and they're playing in your mind. So that is kind of weird. Don't get me wrong, but if it's happening, it's a defense. It's also like, hold on a minute, stay out. You have to know you can do it to defend against it. Does that make sense? Just like you're saying, you have to know somebody wants to look at the moon or Area 51 before you can block it and get those people, make sure people can't see it.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced like weird locations like that where while astral projecting where something like the moon is like a dangerous place. I don't even remember if they said that the moon you couldn't go to. I know it was one of the planets. They might have said that the moon was dangerous. Like if you go there, you'll be trapped or something. I don't know.
No, that's good. It's weird too because you would think I would have done that a lot, and I haven't. That's another thing. The pyramids and the moon. I've heard that too, by the way. So I don't.
Really?
This is the kind
About
of
the
thing.
moon?
No, I have absolutely heard that
Which
from
one, that
someone
you
about
get
you should not
blocked or
go
that it
there.
pulls you in and traps you?
That you shouldn't go. That you
Huh.
shouldn't go. Now, it's one of those things, maybe, and this is the kind of thing, these beings have so much power. Again, I don't know this, but what if I tried to do it once and then they erase the memory, right? I mean, whatever. You don't even have the memory of doing it.
Yeah, I just think that Upsight Vision is very, very interesting. I really do think that, there are other carriers out there, if you could call them. I feel like it could be an untapped, I guess, ability that many humans may possess. And I feel like, yeah, there does need to be more research and investigation as to what it is, how we can interpret it. I think that's probably like the most important aspect of the entire thing, right? How can we put, a camera or a recording software inside of a brain and actually record everything that you're seeing, so that it can make a lot more sense to people for sure. But based on what you've told me, I mean, it seems to me like, yeah, you went through a lot, especially during your days with drug abuse, and you know that's something that is it's an interesting story for sure, and I feel like a lot of people will definitely gravitate towards, especially in the scientific community, with the more you get the word out for sure. And yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have any other questions, just besides yeah, I just want to see more. I actually have more questions like in my head, as to what this could possibly be, and I'll definitely be doing some more digging from my end for sure. Yeah.
Well, everyone that's come towards me, Cubs reached out to me, virtually everyone, to the last man or woman, there's been trauma.
Yeah.
So there's been trauma associated with this ability.
Hmm.
Now I find that intriguing. That's like X-Men. That's like Magneto,
Yeah.
right? In the
Yeah, where he lost
concentration.
the Holocaust and everything, where he lost his
Yeah, yeah,
mom.
yeah. That
Yeah.
literally speaks to that. But they all say it. They're like, oh, but this is family abuse, child abuse, drug abuse,
Yeah.
physical abuse, even physical abuse, not necessarily mental. Like something happened to their body where they couldn't move for years.
Right.
So those kind of things.
Right. Right.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never been through any crazy trauma. I mean, we've all gone through our own form of traumas, but I feel like, yeah, it's maybe it could be unlocked by something, crazy that happens throughout your life. Yeah. What do you think, Patrick?
I'm gonna Patrick. I'm sure we'll wrap up in a minute. I got to stop at 4, but I want to say one other thing about your question about what is a practical use. Once I build this software that's a coordinate system, right? Once I do that and people realize there's something there, I think there will be a rush of people wanting to study it the same way they studied AI, the same way the internet 30 years ago. I think people will want to know more about this organic metaverse. They'll take it more seriously that there is an Akashic record or a place that we can, non-physical place that we can access and obtain knowledge from that will help humanity. That's one of the things I want to do.
Yeah, cool. Christian, I guess I don't have any other questions. You want to wrap this up?
Yeah, definitely. So, Tom, where can people find you? What are your social medias? Where are you the most active?
On Twitter.
On Twitter.
Tom E. Matt. Yeah, look, Upsight Vision. It's my name, Tom Matt. It's at Tom E. Matte. That's where you should reach out to me. If you think you have it, go to my Facebook page. There's like a very few people on it. It's Upsight Vision. Upsight Vision Facebook page, and you can leave a note. And it's kind of like it's the goal is to make it a community for people that have this ability, can talk about it and discuss it. So you can check me out there. And if you want to follow my YouTube page, I don't post a lot, but a lot of times I'll get clips from this. Like, I'll probably do a clip from this and post it on there.
Awesome.
And that's Upsight Vision. That's Upsight Vision too, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, we recently just started this podcast, and it's awesome having guests like you on, gaining different perspectives. Patrick and I, our end motivation, our end goal is to, of course, bring forth a grassroots movement for full disclosure of alien life. Right, Patrick? And
it's definitely your goal.
That's definitely my goal.
Good.
But yeah, we definitely want to just bring these conversations forward, and just bring it, into the eyes of the general pop, So,
yeah, if you guys can, go ahead. Sorry, Christian.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, we appreciate you coming on.
No, I appreciate it. If you guys do share this on TikTok, I want to see, I think there are young people that have it, and say something about Upsight Vision and send them my way. That'd be great. Instagram too. Send them my way. All right, guys.
Awesome. We'll do.
Cool.